You are listening to NEUROMINDED, where we discuss perspectives and ideas as we navigate the mysteries of the cosmos. Thank you for tuning in to NEUROMINDED. In today's episode, we will be discussing The Lord of the Rings and possibly some other fantasy material, but we'll get there when we get there.
Hey, how are you guys doing today? My name is Patrick, also known as Host 1.
And I'm Sean, known as Host Number 2.
No 2.5 today, Sean?
No, he's sleeping.
It's okay, man.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't even know this stuff. I mean, he's so far away from the lore that he probably wouldn't even know a character's name.
No, we got the audiobooks and we put it up to my wife's belly when she was pregnant with him. So he heard it all.
I read about doing that, man. I mean, usually people do classical music, but I guess, an audiobook of one of your favorite, fantasy
right
worlds is just as good. Just as good, man.
Yeah, you do what you gotta do.
If you're listening, you're not able to see my cute little elf ears, but I was actually, Sean, like I was telling you before, I was able to go to the Renaissance Fair today. And
hell yeah.
And my brother was like, "Oh, thanks for coming with and whatever. Let me buy you something." I was just like, what can I get that's kind of cool? And then I was thinking more about it because I kept seeing people with elf ears. So I was like, you know what, man? Just buy me these elf ears, whatever elf ears they have. And it's a longer process than I expected. I thought literally I was just going to go find them, plop them on, and they'd just be on or whatever. I picked out the sizes. They looked at my skin color, just trying to match it better, stuff like that. And then they literally had to cut it into size to fit my ear properly. And then they did this glue, some sort of glue thing that glues right here and on the back. So
that's awesome.
These are set on. These guys are not coming off. I'm worried when I pull them off, it's gonna hurt. That's how it looks set on there. You know what I mean? It's gonna pull some hair out. Yeah. But I got them also so I could have people see me with them on during this whole show. Yeah. So I hope you like them, Sean.
Oh, I love them. They look phenomenal.
I think they're supposed to be I think they're supposed to be elf, because the one I almost did was the Hobbit one. So it's I don't know. I did all these other options. It was a troll one too. But
yeah.
But yeah, man. Have you ever been to the Renaissance? Before we move on more, have you been to the Renaissance Fair in a while or ever?
I don't think I've ever been there.
At all?
I do. When's the last one?
What do you mean? I don't know much. See, last time I went, dude, was when I was a little kid, so I don't even remember schedules or anything like that. I don't know if there's a season for it exactly. I'm assuming there's a season for it, but I don't know if it's only on the weekend or I never looked it up. Are you looking right now?
Yep.
I don't know if you were looking right now.
Yeah, I'm looking up. So so it's in Kenosha.
Yeah, in Kenosha. It's literally as you're going into it, you're crossing the border.
Yeah, because I worked in Waukegan, and we have another facility in Kenosha, which is interesting. A part of our region, there's 5 sites, but who gives a fuck about me and my job?
Yeah, dude. Why are you talking about yourself?
Yeah. Fuck. I'll just go to the Bristol Renaissance Fair. I'm probably I'll just continue by saying I don't know what if there's certain dates and when it ends or whatever, but since this is it feels I think this is the second time. I might have went multiple times when I was younger, but this is feeling of going the second time. My experience is September 5th.
Positive.
Fuck.
Oh, you don't think you'll have time then? Is that why you're saying?
No, because I work tomorrow. Damn. July 9th through September 5th.
You're maybe I can go tomorrow.
Dude, I thought about it for a second. I was
you go next weekend. Damn.
I can't even go. I can't go next weekend. Damn.
A whole nother year you wait. Well, then we should say this right now in this podcast that next summer you're going. Okay?
Yep.
You tell me when, and we're going. Okay.
We're going.
Okay, we're going.
You should have taken
and
me
we're getting
today.
elf ears, bro. I should have.
No, we were busy. It's
No, I know.
my wife's mom's boyfriend's son's birthday.
That's way too many separations from the original person. You don't need to do that. No, I'm just kidding.
Do they have like
otherwise
any,
I would have been confused.
Books or literature for sale there? Like
aspiring
like writers and stuff who are selling like their fantasy
about it, like
books.
The way I think about it is like these people that are like opening up booths and stuff like that, there's so many different like things to go to. There's like literature places that have like cool design, like leathers that go on a book. They have like awesome. The fake swords and all the fake weaponry. They have like all the different like costumes and whatever. Just like it feels like a convention, like you're going to like a C2E2 or like a Wizard World, or you know what I mean. You obviously know what I'm talking about. But like it feels like these people are also these like entrepreneurs that are like, I'm really good at making these little trinkets, so I'm gonna open up a booth at the Renaissance Fair. I didn't look into it, so if anyone listening is like, that's not how they work, these people are all working for the Renaissance Fair, they're not just random entrepreneurs. Okay, dude, cool. But to me it seems like that. It seems like they're just a bunch of entrepreneurs that have like cool stuff. But like,
and like you said,
those like awesome photos. There's like really cool photos. I saw these like they look like rugs or some sort of like tapestry that you like put up on the wall, like a picture, and they were like cats, but they were in like human clothes, like they looked like princes and like stuff like that. Like I'm sure you've seen that before, where it's like a cat head, and there's like on a human body, but it looks like a fancy cat.
That reminds me of Monster Hunter, I think.
Monster
Hunter World, because like
that's funny.
In the game, one of your companions is like a cat, but I don't know if it has clothes or not. So I don't know that much.
I don't know, something like that. But no, like it definitely is like super expansive with like all the things that like you can do there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really should have I should have made an effort to go, because it was for like 2 months. Just about 3 months almost, right?
Yeah. Seems long.
So yeah, that's cool.
Like this. Hold on, I'll show you this. But yeah, just obviously keep going. Only that, yeah. I was gonna buy one for Ashley, but I was like, it was like $40 for one, but it was cool. But yeah, no, like the Renaissance Fair to me comes off as like one of these like giant, like I said, like C2E2s. So going around everywhere, I was saying like multiple times to people that like I love looking at people watching at things like that, because everyone there is so hyped to be there. Like it's like everyone feels like everywhere else in the world to them is just like boring or whatever, like, and coming here is like home. It's like coming home, you know what I mean? It's like feeling and being who you want to be, where you want to be, because these people like they go all out, man. They go really all out. And I'm wearing this t-shirt and I get some elf ears on, but like even then that's still not that much. But like some of these people have like full armor on, and these people like dressed up like pirates. I don't know, it literally reminded me of Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean?
It's a beautiful thing though, people being able to be themselves like that.
Dude, it's so nice. Like no one's judging each other. Everyone's like excited to see it. People like looking at you, but they're looking at you with like admiration, not like what a weird looking person.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny though how we had this topic before, like when we were talking about like ideas, and I get invited to the Renaissance Fair, like I told you, like yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's like it just worked out. It worked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whenever you want to, if you want to start the topic, we can start the topic now.
Yeah, so
I'd love to start.
So all right, so we're gonna kick this off. You could, I'll since I'm describing it, you could go first. But just where did the interest in Lord of the Rings really start for you?
I mean, unlike you, I never like knew anything about the books or really like even considered reading books by that time. So in 2001, when Lord of the Rings Fellowship came out, that was my first experience with Lord of the Rings comic. I didn't mean to say comic. I meant like a fantasy concept of like knights and stuff like that. So I feel like the one thing that brings me back to like Lord of the Rings fandom is just how each movie, like everyone makes fun of Lord of the Rings for being like a 2-hour long film about people walking around New Zealand or wherever filmed at. But like when you go back to it, there's just so much good content and story building in it that I feel like it earned the right to have those kind of scenes. You know what I mean? So I never like worried about like the next movie being good or not, because I always felt like they were building up to something really, really good, and it kept going into the Two Towers and Return of the King. So like my experiences with Lord of the Rings is probably my first experience with like swords and stuff like that. Like when I was, how old was I? I was 10. Yeah, I was 10. I was 10 when Lord of the Rings came out. But otherwise, it's just like, you know, my other experiences with like knights and stuff like that was just like normal knights. But when you're getting in like elves and dwarfs and orcs and all this like crazy shit that doesn't even exist,
yeah,
then like it really like expanded my brain out to like all the monsters and like interesting things that like people could fight.
right.
And what about you? What is your first experiences with like Lord of the Rings?
So when I was in, I'd say like somewhere around maybe 4th grade. Before then, the only book that I ever really tried reading was the book of The Lost World Jurassic Park, in which I scribbled out all the swear words in it because I felt like I'd get in trouble if my parents read what I was reading.
Wow, dude.
After that book, I came across the Lord of the Rings book. It was like one of those thick boys that included all 3 books in them. And yeah. I'm not going to sit here and say I read all of it, but I do remember reading like big chunks of it. And it was right at the cusp of the movies starting to get released. So that's kind of where it started for me. And then the movies came out. I loved the movies. I think I might have saw them whenever they came out on like DVD. It feels weird to say DVD now, because oh man, that's
what is it up to, 8K?
Yeah, I wish I had an 8K player, man. That would look great, but no. And then the movies, and then to kind of segue into our next section, the video games. I did enjoy a few of the different video games. But going into that, I will say that one of my favorite ones that I played was the Return of the King, and it's co-op mode.
Out of the games?
Yeah, out of the games.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say that Return of the King was probably my favorite, and that co-op mode, like before we started this, you mentioned, was really the piece that drove it home for me, because I got to have a friend over, we got to play it, and it was just a fun like team building experience in that sense.
Oh yeah.
But
I was gonna say though, like Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings was like, it was on what PlayStation was that the Return of the King? I think Two Towers was on PlayStation, right? But was the Fellowship of the Ring on PlayStation? Because I'm seeing it on like on Game Boy. I'm seeing it on PC, and I'm seeing it like there's like a Hobbit game.
Yeah, the Hobbit game I actually had on PC when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, there is Xbox. Xbox had Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, and then Xbox. Yeah, I think that's where I played Return of the King. Yeah. But actually, since we're on the subject of video games in general with it, I will give a shout out to, I think, is it Shadow of Mordor? Was that the first one?
Yeah, Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, that was actually a really fun gaming experience for the PS4. I think that's why I got it on. I never got into its sequel, which was War of Mordor, maybe?
I'm pretty sure you're right. Yeah, pretty sure you're right. But yeah, Shadow of Mordor. You know what the thing about Shadow of Mordor to me though was that like it was one of those games where you repeatedly like take down a boss, and then a new one would come up around the map. Yeah. And I remember like getting kind of annoyed how often it would feel like the same thing over and over again. Like you take down one of the main guys, and then you'd feel like you take down another main guy, and it felt like exactly the same.
Yeah,
but
it got pretty old.
Yeah, it felt like monotonous. But like then I looked it up. I don't know if it's a new one or Shadow of Mordor had it, because I never went back to do it. But I remember seeing this video where someone would like basically not kill the main guy over and over again until like he basically was like begging you to kill him, because you keep finding him and he'd keep rising up the ranks to like lead their camp or whatever. But then you'd get to that point where you like kill him. I forgot what else was there. Do you remember what the 3 options were? One was like kill him. The other one was like control him, and then the other one was I'm trying to remember what the third option was.
Man, I do not remember.
Maybe like injure him or something. I don't know. But like I remember seeing this video where he's just showing a clip of him like takes him down once, and the guy's all cocky and like arrogant and bullshit, whatever. He doesn't kill him. And then he sees him again, and he recognizes you. The game has that recognition thing, where like
which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's fun. I think that's really fun. But then at a certain point, it just he kept going and not killing this one boss till finally, like you get to this one point where like you find him again, and like he was just like, just end me, just take my life. Like letting me live is way more painful than the death would be, kind of thing. And I'm like thinking about that, like that's what made it, the whole idea, really creative to me. But the repetition of how you're supposed to handle each thing was kind of like boring to me. So I feel like it doesn't have the replay value that other games would have, just because I just feel like it's just the same thing over and over again. It just gets too bland, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and that really brings me to like not want to continue certain games when it's so monotonous and tedious. It's like that's why like I think if not this one, the next one had the open world to it. Do you remember if this one was open world, Shadow of Mordor?
I think this one was open world, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you have open world, but it's almost like it's copy and paste with how the world is, and then it's copy and paste with the gameplay loop. And like when you just have it like that, it makes me just not want to play it, because it's like, dude, like I did the same thing over and over. I want to feel like I want more immersion in a game, especially digging into the lore of something like this. Like I feel like there's so much more you can do. And honestly, the new Lord of the Rings Gollum game doesn't look that great, but given its like concept, I feel like it might have potential to be something unique or ambitious. Which when something's nice and ambitious, I like, that makes me appreciate it a little more.
I didn't even know there was a new game called Gollum. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it
the heck
doesn't look great, but like I said, if it could be unique in its execution.
I mean, it's for PlayStation 5, so at least it'd be probably beautiful.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like that game has this like idea where it's like majority of the things you were doing in like Shadow of Mordor was like side mission stuff, right? Like you're just like taking down general, and the new general pop up, and you're taking down general, general pop up, to the point where like it had to do that because it was like you were doing that to build up your stats to beat the main mission. So like it almost like, I think it didn't let you buy into it. If anything, it reminded me of like farming, when like you're playing a game and you're just kind of like killing something simple so you can like move up. Like the game tried to make it so like it got harder so you couldn't just like farm a boss or farm certain things to like, you know, build your stats up. But I feel like it didn't know how to do it properly. So like it would still, if you're good at the game, you would just be able to take down these bosses pretty easily anyways. So I don't know. Like I did play Shadow of War, but I only played it for a little bit, and only because like it literally had the same concept that Shadow of Mordor had, where it's like the same feeling came out after a while, where I'm just defeating these you know, side bosses or whatever, and you're just like, like, dude.
It's just But what about the old ones? Let's hear some of those old ones that you were playing. Some of the older games. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about like Two Towers? Yeah, like Two Towers was wonderful, man. Like I'm always fine with those games where like you basically have to like hold off the horde before, and for like a certain time frame, or like you have to hold off the horde from damaging like an area to like that gets them to the next spot. Because I remember in Two Towers, you'd be on the top tower or like the top of the wall, and they'd be coming up on ladders, and you would like fight them off, but then you would have to come over and knock the ladders down so the more don't come in. But then like as you're knocking one ladder down, you'll see like across like the game there's another ladder, so you have to like go in and out of the wall site. Like I guess there was like blocking or whatever, so like you couldn't see the full wall length, you just saw like a section at a time. So you'd be in one section, and then you'd run out of the map basically into a new section, and then you'd be knocking those ladders. And like I love that because like it would fill up with like the orcs, but then you would kill them, you would knock down a ladder, and then you'd like maintain that. I always thought that was like really fun, even if that's like monotonous in its own way. It still felt like the whole thing was moving forward into the mission of the game. It wasn't like just like the whole game wasn't exactly based like that, but the sections that were, I thought they were really cool because like I've always appreciated that design in games, you know?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because like that battle itself, what's the battle called? Helm's Deep. Battle of Helm's Deep. Such an incredible scene in the movie, just like when you get it in the game version, even though it's an older game, just having a little bit of that immersion just really makes it for you, you know?
Yeah, it makes you, and it's like the part when Legolas throws Gimli to the bridge because he's so short. It's like, I don't think it was in the game, but I feel like you go onto that like area of the bridge that like slants down, and you're like knocking them down because you don't want them to get to that door. Right. So like you're like playing as one of the characters. And I was saying this before on like the pre podcast conversation me and Sean were having, but like I was kind of like very particular about which character I was always being. Like I was telling Sean that I'm always being Legolas, unless someone else wanted to be Legolas, then I would be willing to be Aragorn, but I was like never Gimli. And like I felt really like when I thought back about it, it was like I don't know why. It almost had this like oh, Gimli's weird looking, I don't want to be him.
Bogus.
Yeah, right, that's super bogus. Like, but thinking about like I don't know what else it was. It's just like I mean I never really connected with Gimli anyways, but like still it's because he's weird looking, at least in my head. That's what I thought it was. He's just like big bearded dude, like so far away from what I'm used to, like character wise, you know what I mean?
Right, I get you.
Yeah, felt very close-minded. Nowadays, I bet if I play it again, I'd play as Gimli because I love the axes. The axes are sick.
Yeah, and
you were saying that you played as Aragorn, right?
Yep, Aragorn was always my go-to because in the movies, I feel like it's pretty basic, but he was also my favorite character in the movies too.
Dude, I mean, he is the king, so I mean, what can you do?
Strider, first he was trying not to tell him who he was.
Yeah.
Went by Strider. That was
dude. Yeah, no. I'm looking at pictures of the game. It's just crazy how like shitty. Like the health bar was like the sword. So like your health bar was like the green line through the sword. Dude, it's so cool. Just crazy. Cause the Battle of Rohan, or I don't know what it's called. You know when like they're like burning that village down?
Yeah.
That was fun. That was fun. And then even like the bosses were fun. Like when they fought the octopus or whatever that like monster was that was in the lake.
Did they have that in Two Towers also?
I think it was in Two Towers.
So really quick, that's something that I always found interesting about the games is there would be set pieces that happened in the previous movie. So in Two Towers, I think I remember that because don't we go into the mines where they fight the troll in the movie? But like that was in the Two Tower game, but wasn't that was something that happened in Fellowship?
It did happen in Fellowship. You're right. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
You're talking about this battle right here.
Yeah. So that's
right here.
I don't know if that's a Berenstain Bears or Berenstain
I think they just moved it forward. Like this happened in the last movie, but we're gonna put in this one, and then like I don't know, they might have done that with like Return of the King.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure playing Return of the King, I noticed similarities too. But I do. The only level I remember in Return of the King was when they're in the. I'm gonna fuck this up, but Ghost Town. Like
Ghost Town.
Out of respect for the lore.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah. Respect the lore, dog.
Is it
the wraiths when you fight the wraiths in the game? That shit was fun.
I've always
because like what you do is
you
you light the sword on fire, and that's the only way you could damage them is if you like your sword's on fire and then you start striking them with your fire sword. I remember that.
Yeah. So let's see. So why can't I find this dude? I'm failing the fandom right now.
Dude, don't you worry about it. We can come back to it though, and you can write it, and once you remember, you can just type it down in the chat, so that way you can go back to it.
Army of the Dead.
Because I'm down. Oh,
okay.
I'm down to discuss the orders.
Yeah. So it's the Army of the Dead.
Okay.
They're also known as the Dead Men of Dunharrow or Oathbreakers. Okay. They were men of the White Mountains, cursed to remain in Middle-earth by Isildur. After they abandoned their oath to aid him in the War of the Last Alliance, they haunt the caverns beneath the Dwemerberg in the valley of Harrowdale that lay in its shadow.
Ooh,
okay, so
they're the guys that show up in the last movie.
Yeah. So we'll so that's a level I remember, but we'll dig more into those guys once we talk about the movies, because I got a lot to say about those guys.
We're gonna talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the order that we like them or whatever, to and then the Hobbit movies. We're gonna separate them. I don't know if it's obvious for anyone else listening, but the Hobbit movies are not as good. So I'd probably go, if I'm gonna be honest, I'd probably go Lord of the Rings Two Towers, Lord of the Rings Return of the King, and then Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the King, or Fellowship of the Ring.
For the trilogy Lord of the Rings, I would go Return of the King, Two Towers, and then Fellowship. But I do want to point out that like it's really hard to discern the quality between the three, because I feel like they're one entity. But it's really the set pieces and what happens that makes you favor one over the other, because like, my God, that's the most consistent trilogy almost that I've ever seen.
I mean, it's beautiful how like everything's coordinated together. I feel like all the movies were in this really good direction storytelling where you felt like you really needed to keep going when the movie ended. Like you really needed to keep going.
Yeah.
The Hobbit had that same feeling in a sense, but that's only because it was like cliffhangers.
Yeah. So what's your order for the Hobbit trilogy then?
Okay. So I think the decimation of Smaug. How do you say it? Smaug?
Desolation of Smaug.
Oh, Smaug.
Yeah, the Desolation of Smaug.
Smaug. And then the first Hobbit movie, which was called The Hobbit:
An Unexpected Journey.
Yeah, Unexpected Journey, and then Battle of Five Armies was my last.
Yeah, that's fair. And honestly, dude, I think I'm the same way. Desolation of Smaug, then Unexpected Journey, and then Battle of the Five Armies. One thing I do want to note about this trilogy is like, it really felt like they were stretching out something that didn't need to be stretched out as so.
That's a good point.
Initially, they were saying that it was going to be The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, followed up with the sequel, The Hobbit: There and Back Again, in reference to like the in-lore stories that are written by Bilbo and I think Frodo. I forgot what Frodo's is called. Don't kill me, people listening. But
don't kill him.
If they stuck to two like that, I really think that they could have maybe churned out something a little bit better.
Yeah,
because they made up a lot of story beats to keep the film going, like a love triangle with the dwarf and the elf, having Legolas involved with it too. It was like
they really needed stuff to help give it a little bit more pushes. Yeah, I get you. And instead of doing that, they could have just had a better design.
Exactly. Like, I don't mind if you need to come up with stuff, just make it somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
Or at least make it lead somewhere interesting. Just when it like we talked about earlier about tropes, story tropes, cliches. You could do those. You could hit on those notes like you would with a little love triangle in a movie. It follows all those same tropes, but if you do it in an interesting execution, like, I don't have an issue with it. You just make it unique or interesting, and make it worth investing into in this story. Don't just make it like a side plot because you need to extend it through 3 movies instead of 1 or 2.
I know they're just doing themselves a disservice by even like forcing it, forcing that hand or whatever. It just seems like no one wanted that, and then now you're putting it in there to kind of help runtime or whatever, storylines and stuff like that. But it's just like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Like, stay on topic, guys. Right?
Yeah, just stay on topic. Yeah, exactly. And then I was gonna say about The Hobbit that I thought was really interesting. Was that like they put in all this like detail about like the I keep forgetting what they're dwarfs, like all these dwarves and stuff like that, and they like introduce them, and they're like throughout there, and then they finally start letting some of them die in the last movie and stuff like that. And it's just like this whole time it kind of reminds me of like Marvel, how like Marvel doesn't kill characters off that are important, or not important, but like that are fan liked. And then now they like released one character, but then they still like they reverse deaths much as often and blah blah blah. And it's just like they're trying to protect their characters, they're trying to keep them going because they're making money, whatever. It's just like when you have all these characters in The Hobbit and all of them are surviving through the first movie and then the second movie, and then finally the third movie comes and they're just like, oh, okay, we'll let some die, but not all of them. Playing it so safe just feels weird. Because it's like Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Rings, friggin' Sean Bean, like, I don't know, I didn't read anything about Lord of the Rings, so I wouldn't even know this character dies in the book. But like when he gets fucking shot to death by those arrows, like, that was a really good scene, sacrificing that character.
Absolutely.
People like that character, you know what I mean? So I think like that kind of thing is like Game of Thrones level love, where it's like you built up a character enough for people to care, so then when they did die, it actually meant something, rather than just like, oh, this third movie, we should let some of them die, but not all of them, you know? It just, like you were saying, it comes off in this way that like they're trying to be tropish, or they're trying to be protective of characters, but really, by playing it that safe, it just seems so strange to just be like, oh, well, we're willing to release this. It's like, dude, this isn't trading football players or something. You know what I mean? Like, where you're trying to get the best deal. Like, when you invest in a character that people really care about, and then you're just like safely get rid of some that you're like, oh, well, this one can die or whatever. You know, it's fine. Yeah. You know, it just feels, I don't know.
Feels like cheap a little bit.
Feels cheap, yeah. It feels cheap. But I thought it was funny though in The Hobbit, Unexpected Journey, how the Goblin King. I like how people made fun of it because the Goblin King is also David Bowie from shit, I was forgetting the name of that movie. Dang it. David Bowie is the Goblin King in another movie.
Labyrinth.
Yeah, the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
So I think people put his like picture over that big fat motherfucker.
Oh, that's funny.
But like, it's so funny because you got this like, because we got the Goblin King and then we got the Goblin King. Just so cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing was fucking gross.
Yeah. So I want to so since we're on the topic of the Hobbit movies, I'm just
gross.
Nice. Look, get a load of that. What a character. But what a character. I want to talk about some of what I liked in the Hobbit trilogies, just to kind of feed off of what you're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I mean, the Hobbit, like we were talking before, like everything probably has good things to it. So there's stuff that like I enjoyed.
Yeah, so some of the CGI looked really good. Yeah. Some of it not as much, but like the whole thing at the end of Desolation of Smaug, I think was fantastic. With Bilbo versus Smaug and just inside there, all that's going on.
Oh yeah, that was a really good scene when even when he gets covered with the gold, but then he breaks out of it. Like, that was sick looking.
And then it ends there, and then just the very first few scenes in Five Armies was like, defeating Smaug, which. It probably, like, when you're reading the book, it probably doesn't feel like it's that short, like that quick of a defeat, but it's like still, it's like, man, Smaug, I feel like could have done a hell of a lot more than just get picked out of the sky like that the second he left. Like, I don't know. He got
sniped, dude. He got sniped out of the air.
He got the same treatment was done to Daenerys's dragon in season 8 when they're just those boats. I totally forgot about.
Oopsie.
Euron Greyjoy and all of his ships. Whoopsies.
My bad. I wasn't paying attention.
But I think the Hobbit movies were carried also. Well, I'm not going to say carried, but one of the strongest things about it was the performance by Martin Freeman as Bilbo. I thought that great. Bilbo Baggins as a character was more interesting than Frodo Baggins. Frodo's the OG, but Martin Freeman as Bilbo, I thought was a superior performance. And you know that even between him and Gollum or Schmeagol, like that whole thing when he gets the ring, I feel like The Hobbit did that really well. The relationship between, like, how Gandalf was in there with the dwarves and Bilbo, just how that little, I guess, fellowship you could call it, also how they all worked together. I felt that was fine, and the charm and chemistry between the dwarves was also interesting, except the one that fell in love with an elf. That was forced, but everything else was I thought they did that well. And I also what else was I gonna say about this one? We saw Radagast, which was another wizard. I don't know if he shows up in the OG movies, but Radagast
wait, I'm trying to remember, is he the one that like has the sled dog?
Oh, let's see.
Or the sled animals?
Yeah, I think so.
He's like riding around the forest.
Yeah.
I love that bear thing though.
Yeah, what was that character's name?
The guy that turned into a bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was cool.
That was really cool. But it's, what's interesting just in the lore in general. I don't want to get too off topic, but with a lot of the lore, so when people don't die in Lord of the Rings, they end up just taking a ship over to Valinor, which is like this undying land where like the elves go, because elves are basically, they could be immortal, so they go there. Bilbo goes there, Frodo and his friends go there at the end of, at the very end of the Lord of the Rings saga, and it's just like, it's just, I don't know, it's this cute like riding off into the sunset thing. And like, it's kind of funny to think about how it's like, okay, you survived, everything's good. All right, well, here's the, the big old retirement home in the sky kind of thing.
Valhalla.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, you don't die, but you just like, I wonder what the politics look like there. Because, everybody, when they're at the end of their rope, they're just like, all right, you did good. Now you get to go to Valinor. It only opens up for certain people. I think that's a big thing too, and they're touching on that in the new show, by the way. But
good.
I always found that interesting too. That like whenever it's just like, oh, all right, we're taking this boat. Bye, everybody. Like if you look at all the Wikipedias, where like on a lot of Wikipedia pages, it says born, and then it says death. For death, it's always this year they took the boat to the Undying Lands or Valinor or whatever. So it's like dying without dying. I don't know. It's interesting that it's like
cheap as fuck, bro.
Yeah,
cheap.
Super happy ending. But
I mean, I guess that's like comfortable to think about, right? Because that's literally how we like to think of like heaven, or at least people like to think of like heaven, where it's like you may not be on this physical earth anymore, but you're in somewhere better,
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to think about, but
Is there anything else from The Hobbit that you wanted to speak on? Any more positives?
You know what, as much as I didn't think that the villains of The Hobbit were as good as like Saruman or I'm trying to think of the other. What's the name of the wizard that was from the first movie that was comparison with Gandalf? The evil
Saruman.
That was Saruman?
Saruman, yeah, and then Sauron is the main bad guy.
Sauron, him. Yeah. Sauron. I thought that like the orcs. I mean, they were more like the villains of this because it was more focused on the idea of like at the end there's gonna be an orc army versus like all these other armies. That's why the 5 armies, whatever. So like, I know they put so much more focus on those orcs, like the one with the fucking scratched face, and then the one with the hook on the arm or whatever.
I was just gonna bring him up. Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think that's the one where it's like he's got the hook, killing people.
Like, even though like that almost felt like its own way of being like, oh well, this isn't the main. This is like the side. This is like the side main or whatever, where it's like Darth Vader versus the Emperor kind of thing. It's like, well, the Hobbit's not gonna have the Emperor being anything. It's gonna be mostly the Vader. Right. Shit. I feel like that's what they tried to do, and I feel like I don't know. I get part of me wants to like him more than I did, but I don't know. I just feel like they really could have done some cool shit with him. I know that like the disappointing thing people thought about was the CGI being too much or whatever, like too much in their face, because like we were saying before, it's obviously the comparison between the Lord of the Rings trilogy versus the Hobbit trilogy, where it's like you can't compare them because Lord of the Rings did so much right and they're the first one to do it. So the Hobbit was trying to follow behind such a good trilogy that, like, in comparison, I feel like there was no chance to be better
than
absolutely. Lord of the Rings. I just don't think it would have been possible.
It was an uphill battle from the start.
It was that guy that's pushing the boulder up the hill.
Sisyphus, my boy, Sisyphus.
But no, like, I think that was like the thing is like I feel like that could have been really cool if they did that. So like I respect the idea of taking it as a focus with him as being like the main villain that they're worried about. I thought that was cool. I really appreciated that. If they did, I feel like they put more time and they made him more like a Vader-esque fear, then it would have been kind of cool. But like in a sense, it was just too distant in my mind. Like, I don't know. I guess there could have been more like interesting scenes where he could have done like distasteful shit, like killing his own men or whatever like that. You know?
Who was this?
The guy with the hook.
Okay, yeah.
Hook guy. See, that's the problem, is that literally like we don't remember their names. I mean, I know less about Lord of the Rings too, but like still, like both of us don't remember those names because it's just like, fuck, who cares?
Exactly. Like, that's, people always get that wrong when it comes to just villains in general. They always like, dude, make them interesting or else we're not gonna care.
Dude. Why not? And give
it's
him like a good backstory.
The good guys won. Okay, like
I expected. Fuck, dude. That's the problem. People complain about like Marvel movies because Marvel movies have this concept where it's like the heroes are always gonna win. So why do you watch? Well, I like seeing how they win.
Exactly.
So that's what I care about. But like, if they literally just won, then it would be boring. But they always win in a cool way, so I want to see why. You know.
I agree.
So like that's what holds me. So like I know that the Hobbit's gonna end with Bilbo surviving because obviously he's in Lord of the Rings. But like I want to know, why did he survive? How did he survive? Who survived with him? And I want to know it in a really good concept. I don't want it just to happen.
I agree.
But yeah, no, I mean, I feel like everyone should agree. I mean, everyone should agree, unless you're a hipster. No, I'm just kidding. That like Lord of the Rings is obviously superior quality and design or whatever. Just because I was telling you this before. I think the main reason why Lord of the Rings is a lot more like interesting to people is because you're getting a whole bunch of like a diverse cast of characters, and you're really learning about this world building thing of all these like the elves, the dwarves, the humans, the politics, everything that comes together with like people working together and like for a common goal. You know, you have the fear level of like like if I'm interpreting Lord of the Rings correctly, is it realistic to say like the orcs and Saruman are like Nazi Germany, while like there's other like kingdoms that are like, France, United States, or not United States, I guess United States and like other countries like that, would you consider that a fair design level where it's like they were trying to like build enough contact to take down a Nazi-esque enemy?
I mean,
or would you compare it to something else?
I would say maybe more so World War One, because I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to look it up to confirm, but I'm pretty sure J.R.R. Tolkien fought in World War One.
Okay.
Yeah, so he fought in the First World War and the Great War in Middle Earth.
Okay.
That's when he began writing stuff about Middle Earth. Okay, so like your idea is essentially like it's similar. It's just like World War One, I don't think had a big bad like Hitler.
Okay.
Like it was the first World War. It was a big war. So I think your connection is accurate because he was writing this in the trenches, basically. So I imagine that's where he got a lot of those ideas, just how the war worked, how the battle was. It's just, fantastical instead of having to do with like guns and cannons or whatever.
But I guess I'm correct to assume that the design was kind of like, we need to all come together, even though we're not the same and our values are not exactly aligned, because this thing or this country, this enemy or whatever, wants to destroy everything that's good about our communities or whatever. So when I think back about like Lord of the Rings, I feel like that's also one thing that makes you feel so like that brings you back into a world where you believe people can help each other even when they have differences. Yeah. And they literally break it down to like the main cast. Because it's like, it's not just the wider idea of like communities coming together, but it's the idea of community members in each area coming together, and they can literally fight side by side. That scene in Two Towers where he's like, I can't believe that I'm fighting against an elf, or like I want to say the quote correctly. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's like, well, what about a friend?
Yeah, I think he's like, I never thought I'd be fighting side by side with an elf.
Yeah, there, something like that.
And then he looks at him and he's like, how about a friend?
Yeah, like
and that's just so adorable.
Camaraderie where it's like, yes, we're not like the same people. We're not. You're an elf. You're an elf, and I'm a dwarf. But we can find a common goal. Like our similarities come in, and I think that's like, I feel like people can resonate more because people feel like I'm an elf, you're a dwarf, he's a human, he's a hobbit, whatever, and like we see our differences, but we still care about each other enough with like a common goal. So I don't know
exactly.
Well, the Hobbit was more like a bunch of dwarfs want to get their money back.
Oh yeah.
They're tired of being broke.
Bilbo knows how to steal stuff, so let's bring him along.
This giant heist movie where it's like, we want our money back. It's our money, help us get our money. It's like, that's not as easy for everyone to like, oh yeah, I give a shit. Yeah.
Right, so, exactly.
In my head, I feel like obviously The Hobbit did not have a storyline that was actually as like resenting, or not resenting, what's a better word? Like, man, fucking stuttering words and stuff like that right now. Like trying, like resonate, like resonation or whatever. Like, people didn't resonate well with that story comparatively to Lord of the Rings, which was like classic.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah, I would love to do the last topic of that. Do you want to lead?
Yep. So going into the last section of this episode, we're going to go through the OG trilogy, aka the best trilogy of anything Lord of the Rings related, and kind of go over just some of the stuff that we really, really enjoyed, just stuff we really like to see in it. And I'll kick us off. So
sure.
So we'll start with Fellowship. I'll say about Fellowship. You'll say about Fellowship. Then we'll do it like that. Yep.
From the next. Yeah.
Absolutely. So starting with Fellowship, you kind of brought it up earlier, but Boromir's death, I thought was an incredible piece of storytelling, because like leading up to it, he kind of starts to become this more villainous character. the ring was starting to really mess with his mind and start manipulating him, so he was starting to act harshly about it. But just in his final moments, though, he succeeded in redeeming himself, and it resulted in his death and his sacrifice for the hobbits, and that made his sacrifice all the more powerful, because his moments leading up to it, he was being a dickhead. He was being manipulated by the ring. Like, it was one of those things where it's like he was kind of a victim, but he was able to make that grand gesture of being a good guy before he was taken out. So that's one of the key things that I really enjoyed. I would say the Nazgul, aka the Ring Wraiths, they're just super cool. Dementors eat your heart out. The Nazguls are the coolest, black hooded characters in any form of fantasy.
So cool.
And I really loved just how they're stalking them in the beginning, and even that fight. And the great thing about that fight, so leading up to the fight where they stabbed Frodo, the characters are with Strider, which no one knows that Strider is actually the king that was promised, essentially.
He's the king.
He's like this awesome guy, but he's just kind of like he's like a drifter. But he starts helping the Fellowship out, and you really don't see how awesome he is until that fight at that place, because he just fights off all the Ring Wraiths, and he's such a badass about it. And then he takes the torch, he throws it, and it just hits inside of the hood of one of the Nazgul, and it's so funny, but it's also so badass because its face catches on fire, and then it just runs off the cliff there. So that was cool. The way that those Ring Wraiths were also fucked up by Arwen when she's taking Frodo to safety because he got stabbed. She starts saying that spell, and then when they try to cross the water, just that giant wave comes through and sends them off. I thought that was also pretty badass. And
fuck, hell yeah, man.
The Balrog, that whole thing, no one, and I'm telling you, no one can have anything as iconic as the "You shall not pass," and then he just fucking breaks the bridge, and then Gandalf and the Balrog. Well, the Balrog falls, and everyone's like, "Oh wow, good job, Gandalf!
Fly, you fools!"
And then the whip from the Balrog comes up and grabs him and pulls him down. And it's funny you bring that up, because does that mean he's talking about the Eagles?
What?
No, I don't think he is.
Oh no.
If you read these very in-depth takes on that scene, "Fly, you fools" is that's just typical, that's a phrase.
For them
to get going, go, shoo.
Get the fuck out of here, man. Look at me, I'm getting pulled down. You guys aren't gonna save me. It's done. It's over.
And then my final piece that I really liked from Fellowship would have to be Gimli discovering the crypt of his one of his, I don't know if it's ancestor or father or grandfather, but coming across it in the mines. I thought that was a really good character scene for Gimli, and I guess I appreciated that about it. I need to rewatch all these movies, by the way, but
dude, the best thing about these movies is the replay value overall. Just watching all three back to back or whatever, binging them or whatever people want to call them, just it's always just amazing. It always
and the
feels
extended
good.
Versions too, man.
Dude, I mean, they're so long, so it's crazy to think about people watching them back to back. But I mean, the easiest way to do it is obviously watch one at a time. So Friday night, watch one. Saturday night, watch another. And then before you go back to work on Sunday, or I mean, if you work Mondays, you watch Sunday before you go to bed. I feel that would be the best way to do it, mostly because it's you spread it out, but you're still getting a weekend full of Lord of the Rings. So, that's perfect. By the way, you spoke about a lot about what I would have talked about. I'm trying to remember though, in the crypt, what, I'm trying to remember exactly what gets them first. Is it the troll that gets them first, or is it
they fight the troll.
That come out first? The troll first,
and
then orcs show up. Okay, Like, dude, that shit.
Well, the orcs and trolls, they both show up together.
Dude, so cool.
Oh, there's that iconic scene too. People post a lot where like Gandalf is just like, I know of this place or something. Or God, what is that?
And remember the line.
Yeah.
I feel like it's crazy too to think that like the movie is so complex that no matter how much like scenes we could like think of right now, that like it gets broken up so much between like the main three and then all the different hobbits working together with like, you know, with like Merry, you know, Sam, Pippin,
right.
And then like you have like you know, what is it, like Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf. Like it's such a huge thing. Like I think they did a really good job separating people throughout the whole series overall, but like in that sense where it's just like you really felt like everyone was being put into enough scenes that was really giving you a good storyline for each character. And that's probably like the best thing about it was that like The Hobbit didn't get that, because literally the whole storyline, every character, all a million of the dwarfs were in like every scene, and like you still felt like some got very small amounts of
you didn't even know.
Others got a lot.
I can't tell you all their names.
Now you don't know any of their names.
But with another strong thing, I don't want to steal too much of. Well, I already stole a lot of the shit that you liked about it, but
no, that's
I will
fine.
say that
I'm happy because I'll just say ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto.
That OG Fellowship scene where they're having like that roundtable discussion about the ring. And you have my ox, and like they talk about all that shit.
You have my bow. Yeah. You have my sword. You have my bow. And my ox.
And then like everybody misquotes the one does not simply walk into Mordor.
Yeah,
like
you don't simply
he says it, but it's like the picture they got is when he's saying something else, when Boromir's saying something differently.
That's a classic if you think about like memes where they're just like they're using an image even if it wasn't that, but it's like
I know, right?
It connects in its own way still, even though it's not correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too funny.
So would you want to just go into the Two Towers then?
Yeah, I was just
and you can kick it off.
Sure.
Yeah.
You want?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So my first, the first thing I'd probably bring up is they're taking the hobbits to Isengard. I fucking love that line, dude.
And then there was that song that came out. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Isengard. But like the Two Towers overall just had this like extensive level of like fights and stuff like that. That like. I don't know. I mean, would you say it's comparable in Return of the King, or would you probably say that it's like a higher level?
Which part?
Of like action, like the action in like Two Towers. Would you say that probably that was like the highest level?
I'm pretty sure that there's an equal amount. I just think I think in Two Towers it had the most concentration onto one battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because Battle of Helm's Deep,
it was such a long battle, dude.
Oh wait, is that the one in the rain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's raining.
Okay, cool.
It's raining. But yeah,
yeah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that it's got the same amount of action, you could say, but Two Towers, it's really the thing that made it iconic was its concentration on the one battle.
Okay. Do. But just like, you know, the one thing I was always like I always like go back to remembering when we were talking about a long time in the beginning before we started recording, was just like the level of breakdown in that battle, like just like the movements and where they're going through, and you know, it's kind of like when I was saying the whole like connectivity of like the characters kind of just being like back to back killing orcs, and then they're like supporting each other, and they're like, you know, you got fucking I'm trying to remember, that's Two Towers isn't the one where no, never mind, I don't want to say it because I think it's the next movie he does it. But when I was gonna say when Legolas starts doing some crazy fucking tricks. You know, like he's
skating down the stairs on his shield.
Yes. Yeah. Was that in Two Towers? Or
yeah, that was in Two Towers. That was in the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Okay, then yes. That scene was fucking crazy. So like the orcs that would like, they're basically like blowing themselves up to like create holes. Like they like were shooting, all the orcs, right? They're shooting all the orcs that were trying to get over there, and they're getting like killed and downed and down and down until finally one of them got past. And he just like jumps and just and just blows that wall, dude, and breaches it. Like the game showed that scene so well, because then as soon as that happens in the game, like now you're in the next part of the wall and you're like fighting them off to like try to slow them down to the next level. And then just like how broken down that was, like it just seems like that fight, just like even though it was the same area, it just felt like a whole new fight every single time there would be a new like location.
Yeah, exactly. That was really, God, that
yeah,
whole
no,
battle.
Go ahead. I want you to also talk. I know I want to talk about the tree people. What are they called? The
Ents.
The Ents.
Oh, see, so that's something that I think was one of the best things too, was their whole arc, because you had Merry and Pippin with them, which was great, and you got to hear a little bit about the Ents, which was also fantastic. But the fact that they took out that one, they defeated Saruman, which was awesome, because they flooded his little, cavern where he was making his orcs.
Yeah, his little orcs. He drowned them.
Yeah,
he drowned their fucking asses.
So I thought that whole piece of it was because really interesting.
That whole storyline of them was basically like the idea that like, hey, they may not be like attacking you and like fucking with you guys right now or whatever, but like they're going to be sooner or later. You know what I mean? Like, unless I'm remembering, I feel like that's the reason why they even step up, is because they're like, shit, like, yeah, they're cutting down our people, but we don't usually get to see that because we're so passive that we don't like pay attention to like the minimum amount of like damage they're giving us, right? I just thought that was like really appreciative, because it's like, isn't that like how it is in a lot of like other contents where like you find like a group of people that feels like, oh, I don't need to interfere, like we don't bother anyone, they don't really bother us, like not our problem, right? It's not my chair, not my problem,
exactly.
But like for them, they're like, dude, no, this is your problem, like this is not just our problem. It seems like it because it's more directed to us, but like, this is something that's gonna blow up even further, and so what?
I was gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that like the trees also assume that the hobbits they were bad too. Like
I thought they were orcs, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were like,
is that what it was? They thought they were orcs. Like
yeah, they thought they were little orcs.
Because
I remember that.
I think they were just absorbed into what was happening to them, like specifically.
Yeah, specifically, They stepped on that orc though.
Yeah,
remember?
I'm
trying to remember. I think that was the scene we were talking about with meat's back on the menu, boys. Like I think that's the scene right before they get away. Like they start like fucking fighting each other, and then they get attacked by that other by those guys, and then the hobbits get away, and that's when they like that one orc tracks him and finds him, and he's about to kill him, and then then stamps on him, and he's like, how do we know that you're not orcs too?
Right.
Like, dude, we're like 2 foot tall.
Yeah. It's like, do our faces look like orc faces? Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just funny because it's like it's like almost like the idea that like really tall people don't differentiate between like what is a short person, right? Because a short person to like me would be like a 3 foot tall person, right? Like an adult that's 3 foot tall, that's short because I'm only I'm 5'5". But like short to like a 7 foot person would be a person that's 5'11". You know what I mean? But
yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's not short. But to them, it's still short. So it's like to them, it's like anyone who's not like our height or even close to us is fucking tiny. So all you guys could be orcs. I don't fucking know. Like they're not worried about particular designs like that. Like I mean, I get what you're saying is like, dude, are we ugly looking monsters? Because if not, no, we're not orcs.
Yeah, but I would say that's that was another excellent piece of Two Towers.
Oh hell yeah.
being able to see the ends. Yeah. So then Return of the King.
Yep.
Right.
Go ahead.
So Return of the King, I spoke on it a little bit, but the spirits that, you know, broke their oath to Isildur, and they were just bound.
Go into that? Yeah, you want to just go into that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I really thought it was I thought it was a really good arc for the spirits themselves, and I feel like it proved how effective of a leader Aragon was. How he was like, man, we're outnumbered. Shit, this doesn't look good. Oh, there's a whole cavern of dead people who are probably going to try to kill me, but I can maybe try to get them to join us. I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
And it felt great when like Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas show up to that battle at the like. Actually, it's probably like halfway through the movie at this point with the extended cut. You feel like it's the final battle, but I think it's like the halfway mark. But they all show up to the battle, and it's just those three on the boat, and the orcs and the other human type race. I'm not sure what they're called, that are helping the orcs. They're there too, and those three just come from the boat, and everyone's like, oh, what the heck. And then just a whole wave of the ghost army just float over and just start destroying everybody. And that moment that Aragorn has with the King of the Dead at the end of that battle, just excellent. The spider scene with Sam finally being able to have his moment to, you know, do some really good action.
And that was the fuck out of him.
And I mean, let's just put respect on Sam's name through this whole trilogy. That's the kind of like best friend that you want. Like,
for real, and it's kind of funny the actor who plays Sam. It's like people that like relate him to just Stranger Things or like other things is so crazy.
Sean Astin is Sam. He is not Bob. He is.
Yeah, he's not Bob. He's not. Who else? The fucking guy from
51st Dates.
Yeah, he's not that fucking character. You know what I mean? Like he's Sam. You know what I mean?
Samwise.
Samwise. Or I guess people can all say Rudy. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's fair, Rudy.
Yeah, I could hear that.
Yeah, no, he's like Sam. That was like the best role that Sean Astin or Astin. Yeah. That he's ever had. You know. And I don't know if really, he's gonna get a better one because it's a good role.
Frodo turning bad at the last second, and basically the only good guy Gollum, just kidding, not good guy, but the only reason that it happened is because Gollum doesn't realize that if he didn't just leap on his shoulders and try to take the ring at the edge of the freaking volcano like that, he probably could have kept the ring from being destroyed, because Frodo was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, he was gonna keep
but
it.
When he was like going away, Gollum just like bites off his finger to get it, and then in his like excitement of getting it, then Frodo is just like, you know what, fuck you, and they like both fall.
Fuck you.
But it's really I like that Frodo basically couldn't do it. Like by the very end there, the ring was strong enough where like nah, he wasn't gonna do it. And that's what happened, I think, with Isildur in the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring, was they were right there at the fucking volcano, and he's like, nah. Like it speaks to the power of that ring and the power of Sauron with being able to manipulate, you know.
Would you say though that like the ring represents the idea of like power, and control or something? Yeah, corruption.
The corruption
like
of
the
power.
idea of like how we would even think of like police brutality in a sense, right? Like the idea that like you have like unscathing power, like you don't want to give it up easily, and it corrupts you.
Yeah,
like the best people in the world can get corrupted by it. You know, it's, it's
how
like
corruptible it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the idea of like, either die hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain kind of thing, where it's just like, you have power for so long, sooner or later it's gonna take you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the ring is. It like slowly took him to the point where like he didn't even have to wear it. He didn't have to do certain things. He just had to be near it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, I think I said I feel like they imitate that a lot though too, with like jewelry and stuff like that, with like other content where they're like, this object makes you crazy.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is where it originated from. I'm not too knowledable of literature in the 1800s. Yeah, it is absolutely
it's definitely
the best
representation of it, because it's like it's amazing to think about.
And then the last scene I'll bring up is Ewan. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. She's the one who is simping pretty hard for Aragon, but Aragon has his heart set on Arwen. But that's not to, I don't want to disrespect Ewan because she's a badass in her own right. They didn't want her to fight because she's a woman, and it's I don't know, in terms of like female empowerment, I thought it was excellent. But the fact that like they're fighting what do they call him? Oh man, the main Nazgul guy.
The main Nazgul?
Yeah, he's like the Witch King. Yeah, that's the Witch King. Yeah, that's him. That's him. My bad.
No,
he's one of the Nazgul.
Mm-hmm. He's a king.
Yeah, the Witch King, which is awesome. His little dragon that he was flying around with, super cool. But when he's like, "No man could ever kill me," she takes off the helmet. "I am not a man," or whatever she says, and just stabs him in the face. I am no man. But yeah, that's what she says. But when she stabs him in the face, his face just like implodes. Like, I don't know the science behind why it did that, but that was fucking cool. It just like a black hole. It just fucking, and then he just collapses. Dude, that was excellent. That was really cool.
Yeah. I was gonna say though, when I was thinking about like with Legolas doing like crazy shit, like you're right, he like skated down the shield in Two Towers, but then I think he like takes down one of those elephants in Return of the King, and he like skates down the and he's just like hitting people with arrows and shit like that. Like that's like the best thing about it. Like I feel like the one thing these fantasy things give us, they give us this idea where like we don't worry too much about the physicality and the physics of everything that's going on, because it's so cool that literally like there's so much stuff that like you could like break down and be like, this doesn't work this way and stuff like that. But really it's like, honestly, who gives a fuck? Like I don't know, like I don't give a shit if like Legolas is so good that he can like do all these crazy things like that literally make no logical sense to human bodies, but also it's like you're also accepting that he's an elf that doesn't age and can live for eternity, basically. Like you have to accept so much, and it's like at a certain point it's just like some people say that's like a weakness for a storyline to have, where it's just like, oh well, if you don't have rules and logic, then like you can just do whatever, and if you can do whatever, then nothing of it matters. But it's like I feel like they don't take advantage of that concept that people that speak of, that they do have levels of like realism. Like Aragon is a human, he can't do that shit, like he's not gonna be skating down elephants or whatever. He's human, but he's still like a fucking badass, so it's like a really good fighter. So
yeah, exactly. And I think that like you could be super fantastical with your execution, but you give yourself rules. Like that's the best fantasy, is they give themselves their own rules to abide by. And that's why as the viewers were able to accept it, is because they respect and they abide by those rules. But they're just not the same as like real life. Exactly. And that's how you know you have something great.
I agree. But yeah, man, I think that like Lord of the Rings is one of those like I think that this whole trilogy and the whole concept, like the books, the movies, the games, everything, I think it's gonna live for a long time. I can't imagine that. Like I feel like the only thing that people could even compare that has like a level of knights and sword fights and stuff like that would be like Game of Thrones. But even then, like Game of Thrones still, I don't know if Game of Thrones is ever gonna touch the level of fandom that Lord of the Rings has created. You know what I mean?
I think from what's been established, especially with like the world building, I think that Game of Thrones, like they like based on its own merits, it's an incredible world that was built. I do think that some things I would assume, and I think might be confirmed to have been like inspired by pieces of the Lord of the Rings, since a lot of just about all fantasy. But I will say where the difference is, like there's a lot of differences between them though. in the most broadest sense, I would say one of the biggest differences is that Lord of the Rings is considered like high fantasy, while Game of Thrones would be considered like grimdark, which is typically a term used for like more gritty and darker types of fantasy. High fantasy is typically, you don't see a lot of like the gritty, disgusting stuff that people are doing, while grimdark kind of
the sex and violence.
Yeah, exactly. Like and even the violence in Lord of the Rings is like not, it's not as graphic, but it's there.
It's there.
But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of differences. Even the magic systems, I'm pretty sure that George R.R. Martin has several different magic systems coexisting in his series, A Song of Ice and Fire, while like Lord of the Rings, it has a few different magic systems, but there's not as much. I would say maybe Game of Thrones world building is a little more complex. Like, sometimes it might be too complex, seen as though they couldn't adequately adapt it by the time they got to the end of season 8. So yeah, it would like, but I do not think that Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, I think it'll be a while before it's really considered a classic in the same vein as Lord of the Rings.
I respect that answer too, and I feel that way too as well. I feel like Game of Thrones is really fun to think about, and like the story building is really good, but I feel like Lord of the Rings is such a top tier of fantasy that even people that have that level of like Game of Thrones is awesome because of the gore and the realism and all the stuff you're talking about, that like really breaks it down to like, you know, Lord of the Rings could have that kind of concept in a sense, but they would never make that. But because the Lord of the Rings is such a fanatical level of like story building that's already like broken down through these 3 movies and then, you know, The Hobbit or whatever, like I think that like Game of Thrones can't touch what they've done so far in their amount of time frame of being like, I feel like they're starting because I mean, when did Game of Thrones come out? When did the first like book come out? Do you know?
The book might have been the 90s.
The 90s, really?
Song of
and
Ice
then when did the
Fire.
show come out?
2010.
2010
or 2011, one of those.
Okay, one of those. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, 1996 was a Game of Thrones. 1998 was a Clash of Kings. A Storm of Swords was 2000. A Feast for Crows.
Game of Thrones came out 2011.
Yeah, and then that's when A Dance with Dragons, the 5th book of the series, also came out in 2011. Nothing since then.
But like what I'm thinking though is like Lord of the Rings came out 2001, and then the second one came out in 2002, and the third one came out in 2003. And like I was saying before, that's so cool that every year for 3 years we got a new movie. That was awesome. But like that amount of time, and then now it's 2022, and we're still like, it's still good enough and interesting enough where people are watching the TV show on Prime and they're willing to watch it. And like, even if there's like the critiques like you were talking about and, you know, people complaining, like it's still holding up. With like Game of Thrones came out 2011 and it almost like sacrificed itself in the last season, and then it got a new storyline, but it's like this new storyline is kind of saving the ending of the original show. So it's like, you know, in a way it's like it's in repair mode. It's trying to repair the downfall that that happened before, you know.
Right, exactly.
Lord of the Rings, I feel like Lord of the Rings never had a downfall. I think they just had like a big break in between because like, I mean, I don't know. There might be a good reason why they've had such a large break from 2003 or no, The Hobbit, I guess you got to go off, right? Because The Hobbit's the last content. When did The Hobbit end?
The Hobbit?
Yeah.
Like the movies?
Yeah, like when was the first one?
Well, 2015 was the last one. 2012 was, and then 2013 maybe was Desolation of Smaug.
Okay,
but so 2012 December.
Okay, so 2003 is when Return of the King, and then The Hobbit was 2012. So we have, just like 9 years.
Yeah.
Like 9 years, and then Hobbit. Yeah, Hobbit. No, I like how it did it too. Hobbit went back to back. 2012, 13, and 14.
Yeah.
And then now in 2022, they're making a series. So it's like, I feel like it also could survive even if they didn't continue. Like, Lord of the Rings fandom would still survive. I feel like Game of Thrones I feel like, this is just my opinion. This is subjective, not objective. I feel like Game of Thrones felt like they needed to do something to kind of pull back the misses that happened in the past. You know? While like Lord of the Rings is like, well, the nostalgia might make this show good too. But even then, like, the nostalgia is not necessary because we're like putting a lot into this fucking show, you know? I mean, just by watching the first like 15 minutes of that show, I could tell that they're doing some crazy shit, and I'm excited to finish up.
Right.
And by the way, everyone, this whole episode and everything was all based off the idea that like the new Lord of the Rings came out, and also like Sean's been talking about it, so it's like made me want to think about Lord of the Rings more and realize like this is like the kind of stuff that I feel like I wish I could be more like into like the cosplay of it and stuff, like Dungeons Dragons, stuff like that. But I don't know. I just also know it's really expensive.
Yeah.
To like get all that gear and stuff.
Honestly, I might buy Shadow of War just to. You should. Because I read that there's like multiplayer in it or something.
And stream it too.
Yeah, but like, and Shadow of War with the multiplayer, it could at least make it more interesting since the gameplay loop is, probably as boring as its predecessor. Thank you.
Everyone else,
sorry.
I just want to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I appreciate anyone who would be willing to listen to this, even if they listen to it just to critique us on our opinions, But thank you.
Thank you for listening to NEUROMINDED and joining us in today's episode where we discuss the Lord of the Rings. And be sure to check out Rings of Power. It is now officially debuted on Amazon Prime. Don't listen to the hype. It's a good show.
Yes, thank you very much for listening. This has been Patrick Graff is your host, number 1.
And then this is Sean as host number 2. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a great night. We'll talk to you guys soon. Next week.